Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lastia Cahoot and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia Cahoot, and once again, as always, I'm here with my co-host on the show and in life, Mr. Glenn Sheridan.
That would be me. Hello.
And as always, we have a super special guest that we are really excited to talk to today. I think this is the first time that we are having someone on that we really don't know at all. Met this person recently at a public gathering, and I loved the way that she spoke. I loved the words that she was using. What she was talking about resonated so fully with me. I actually ran up to her after she spoke and said, "Hey, this is who I am. My husband and I do a podcast. Would you be interested in joining us on the podcast?" And she said, "Sure." So we're really excited to have her on today. All I can tell you so far is that this person is a spouse, a mother of two, and for the past 13 years has been a BC government employee. Her educational background include a bachelor and master in psychology with a concentration in perinatal counseling, which is about or in and around pregnancy, and 2 years after that. Aside from that, we did meet at a freedom rally a couple of months ago in Victoria, BC, Canada, which is where we're coming from today. And like I said, the words spoken just really resonated with me, and so I am so delighted to have this guest on our show today. So as we jump in, I would like to just first say thank you, because we are so grateful to be coming to you from Saniston on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, where we live, work, breathe, and play on the unceded lands of the Wasanich people. So without further ado, with all of this that has bubbled up already, knowing that there is a great conscious conversation that is already in play, to our guest today, Karine Bourgeois, please tell us, who do you think you are?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. It's funny because the first thing I thought when I heard the name is the show that was for a while going on about your genetic background and your family trees, and I, yeah, I ended up spending quite a bit of time looking into who I am genetically, in terms of my family lines, and I think those things are so interesting. I think we have a tendency of just kind of focusing on the here and now and, who we are in terms of where we work, which I'm not sure is the right approach because I think that's just one very small element, and I think we put way too much attention to it, honestly. And there's so much more to who we are than that. There's who we engage, how we engage with people. I think it's how we engage with our family specifically, and how we reflect in the world, and how we are participating in society, how we participate in the democracy, how and I think we're so busy focusing on our work and our daily lives that we have forgotten all the most important things. Because the truth of the matter is, when you're gone, what you did for a living, unless it was really helping people on a daily basis, what is your legacy?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack in there. And it just, okay, so here, because we don't know each other,
Yes,
I'm just going to sort of, talk a little bit about where I'm coming from. And Glenn and
yes.
I have similar views and sort of dabble in similar things. But I, for the last 5.5 years, been in spiritual and consciousness studies. And I just recently completed a bachelor's degree in advanced consciousness studies. And so for me, when I think of this question, most of my life for the past 5.5 years has revolved around, who am I? What am I? in just sort of like the purest sense and purest form, whether you want to think of it in terms of spirituality or consciousness or God or faith, energy, universe, whatever it is that kind of works for you. That's what I have been immersed in. And for me, when I sort of was introduced to the notion that there's only one thing going on, call it God, call it energy, call it universe, call it spirit, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that everyone and everything is that we're all interconnected with each other, not only as, living creatures, but everything. And
Yeah.
then to about a year and a half ago, go into advanced consciousness studies where we were talking about spirituality and quantum physics and the, intermingling and intertwingling of it. And to sort of really be immersed in the idea that there is no time, there is no space, that there is only the here and now. And in this present moment, there are infinite realities that can be occurring, that what I'm experiencing, even though right now I see you and I see Glenn on the screen, that you guys, even though we're having sort of this collective agreed upon experience, you guys are having a totally different experience. And at any time, we can go onto a different trajectory, just by how we use our minds and how we choose to think, how we choose to
Yeah.
perceive. And so when you were talking about your stuff at the Freedom Rally, which was my favorite presentation. There was a lot of great information. There were a lot of great conversation. And then there was some stuff which is like, oh, this is why people who don't agree with why we're here are saying like, you
Yeah.
guys are wackos. So for me, it was just the idea that we are so much more than the job that we do.
Yeah.
That what you just talked about, when you're gone, it's about sort of what you leave behind. And really it's more about who you were, rather than what you did. And
Yes.
so how, when you talk about engaging with your family and those around you and how we are reflections of each other, I love that, because to me, it just, what I do, what I do to myself, I do to someone else. What I, think or do about someone else, it's a reflection on how I view myself. And so it was for me very refreshing and affirming to hear the way that you spoke. So when you talk about, we're so much more than that, what is the so much more to you? What does that mean?
Oh, how do I? Well, first of all, I forgot to say thank you for actually inviting me because this is great, and I should have said that from the get-go. Um, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation because I love those kinds of conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so, what is more? Oh, that is such an interesting question to me. I think um, yeah, I think we're disconnected. I like the idea that it's almost like there's you can call it an energy consciousness, and there's lots of different philosophers and psychologists and psychiatrists that have talked about what that it is, right?
Hmm.
But I like the idea that there is a consciousness. I think how we engage with it is different. And I think that's where that reality comes in, right? How people perceive things, because each of us have a lens that we see or engage with this consciousness that we're talking about. Um, I had a bit of an epiphany. I went to, there was a gathering and I met with someone and they talked about how, like, we think about humans having consciousness and energy, and they were talking about plants and they were talking about living things like food and being mindful of like how they have their own energy and they have their own, quote unquote feelings. And there was that person was talking about a research where they had literally put a lie detector and hooked it up to plants and different food and eggs, and how the intention of the person that was looking at these things had an impact on the actual, living plants or food or eggs. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, we're so disconnected from that energy, that we are so self centered, that we don't have the reality of actually not just engaging with, our loved ones and the people around us, but how do we engage with our everything that's living around us? So the air that we breathe, the intention that we have, and how that's impacting your household and potentially impacting your children that are in your household and the people that come in your house. And um, the same thing with the food you eat. So if you pray over your food or you put intention in that food, then it's coming to, potentially heal you, not just feed you and give you vitamins. And maybe, we put some kind of thoughts around, well, how far is the food coming from and how alive is it? And, there's so many different things that can, and complexity to that questions that I feel like I'm just bringing you in all kinds of different places. Um, but at the very least, I think that um, we come here in these lives with certain educational plans and things that we are hoping to achieve and goals, um, and we have freedom to make decision around that, and that consciousness is sort of our playground, if you like, and we can either decide to engage with it fully or not, and it's completely up to us. But I think that we have underestimated the ability to engage with this consciousness, to heal us, to help the earth, help others, etc.
Wow, there was so much in there. I love that you are continually using the word engage. I love everything that you just said, about consciousness is our playground. And Honey Bunch, I thought of you because play is one of your sort of words for creativity and consciousness and how we're, expressing how we're here to express.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you said, use the word freedom, and we met at that freedom rally, that we can decide. We are always, always, always at choice to decide
Yeah.
whether we're going to engage with it fully or not, or to what extent, to what level of
Yeah.
awareness,
Yes.
we're gonna be at, with and as that consciousness. So, Honey, once you were smiling, I feel like you want
Yeah.
to jump in here.
You know what was coming into my mind there as you were talking about encountering that person, or those people giving you a different perspective on the idea of, or perhaps a renewed perspective on the idea of how we engage with, the land and food and what food is to us and what energy is and all that. I just had this image of, like when you're saying praying over your food, because you're in the perinatal,
Yes.
care thing. It's like that's the first version. If you have a mother and child, and there's, breastfeeding, that's there's this connection between the mother and the
Yes.
infant that is like a flow of trusting. It's an expanding relationship, because it's
Yes.
always going to be pushing. The mother has to let the child, you know grow and go further and further away. But in the initial experience is the child is completely one with the mother, and being nourished by whatever the mother is putting out and feeling and being in that moment. So that's quite an image, like the of course, and that's not what every baby experiences, because there's formula these days and all that stuff. But and yeah, but it's just like that's a pretty cool image. And the other thing that reminded me of there was, we're kind of dealing now with this birthing of this new version of the consciousness, right? I think that's like we're all being tested in our own way.
Yeah.
We came here, as you said, with these educational plans. Like, what do we want to do when we arrive here, and that kind of thing. And each each person is going to experience their own journey and path. But like right now, there's clearly this focus of like testing of those plans, I guess. Like, what are you really about? Like, do you really believe in these principles? Do you believe in things like honor and truth, and just, you know appreciation for being free, right? That's a big one these days in Canada. But yeah, so thank you for that image. I just had this.
Well,
Yeah.
Glenn, I have to say it's the most interesting thing that you said that, because so I facilitated mom and babes group for
Mhm.
I would say probably a good 5 years, and and it was a breastfeeding counseling group. And what was really interesting is that I remember more than once, you'd have a mom that come in and say, I don't know what's going on. My baby just won't, like, it's just pushing away. It's just
Mhm.
not wanting to settle down. And
Yep.
the number of time that I would just look at them and say, so what is going on in your life?
Yeah.
What is going on? And then they would start telling me about how they're moving, and their in-laws are injured, or someone just passed away in the family, and they're running around going to funerals and trying to organize things. And it was like, okay, so now you know why your baby is not wanting, because it's feeling everything you're feeling, and it's overwhelming. So they're just like pushing, and not
Yeah.
because they don't want to, they're just being fussy because they're having that connection. What, and of course, breastfeeding is one way to connect. But what we also found is that unfortunately, there's a lot of in their society, there's a lot of women that are taking antidepressant, and it kind of makes things complicated. And there's often this conversation around, well, if you're taking these drugs, some of them are safe for breastfeeding, some are not, and so a lot of moms are kind of tentative as to what to do with that. And sometimes they're just, there's a lot going on in their lives, and it's just the idea of breastfeeding is overwhelming. And I think it very much is the idea of breastfeeding. I think we're so disconnected, and we see so few babies that a lot of women will held the baby for the first time when they actually have their own. And so trying to come to terms with the reality that they're completely now, this person's, or this little person's full world, and they have to take that on fully, is there's a certain level of adaptability that needs to occur, and it's like
Mhm.
there's an adjustment period for sure. And then breastfeeding is not something that we see very often, or that people, it used to be that you would have your grandma would be around, and she had like breastfed like a half dozen kids, and you have your cousin and your niece and your aunts, and everybody around you would be really supportive of that, and you would see it, so you would have some kind of point of reference. And people don't anymore, and they're very isolated. So what happens is a lot of them end up not breastfeeding, and level of postpartum depression and postpartum blues, there's almost this kind of attitude that that's normal. There's a certain normalcy around that. The truth of the matter is, it's not something that should be something that's a regular occurrence. But we found that infant massage worked really, really well and helped with bonding, because now you have that ability again to engage, right? And it's physical, but it's also, there's energy in that, and there's that thought in that, because now what you're doing in the context of an infant massage class is that you're learning to pay attention to cues, because that's what it is. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
In newborns and little ones don't have the ability to speak, but they can communicate by how they react to the touch, by how they're responding, how fussy they are. But I agree with you. It's all of that kind of interaction that we have, whether it's physical, whether it's through food, whether it's energetically. I think it's all of the above, honestly. But it's really, really interesting to see those dynamics, because we are a little bit disconnected to what the reality, and one of the things that I was well known to say is always go back to the caveman. We've survived, tens and potentially hundreds of thousands of years. And if we have managed to survive, then obviously we must have been doing some things that were good.
Yeah. Wow. Now I'm having images of our experience with our daughter. Lassie, do you want to jump in there?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, she's 17 now, and she's about to graduate high school in a few months, and most likely go back to Toronto, which is where we were up until
Yeah.
about 5 years ago. And yeah, just I mean, we when we were finally ready and in sync, together, Glenn and I, to have a child, we just, and Glenn had already had two kids from a previous relationship that were much older. We were so excited. We worked with our naturopath. We like there was some astrology stuff that we like brought into play because thought, if we could have a girl, then that would be great. And and so there was all this stuff that we did. We read a bunch of like Dr. Sears books and the Ina
Yeah.
May book on natural childbirth, which made me feel like I could do anything.
Yeah.
I had a friend who had a baby, a couple of kids, a few years before. She lent me this like incredible meditation tape that I listened to every night about just like there's room in my body for both of us to do the work that needs to be done, and it's in sync and it's easy and effortless and whatever. I did Tai Chi and breath work, and I felt so sick for the first few months that I
Yeah.
actually ended up leaving my job, which was not, I thought I'd be handing over my pastry position to someone like, in a blaze of glory and whatever. But I felt so horrible that I actually left my job, and I was just able to be pregnant. And once I got over the sickness after about 4 months, I loved being pregnant. I had such an amazing time. I took such good care of us, and Glenn took, care of us, sort of thing. And it was wonderful. And, we also were like so confident that our daughter or the baby, whoever it would be, would go from like breast to cup, didn't even buy bottles. And then she was born and turned our world completely upside down and inside out. And we even had a natural home birth, which was like part of the plan, and it was amazing. And yeah, she didn't sleep. She was like out of the womb on me, raring to go, like a little frog, crawling off, sort of thing, with her big black eyes. But she breastfeeding was impossible, and I ended up pumping for almost 2 years with the machine that we rented from the hospital so that she could get breast milk.
Yeah.
She slept on Glenn, sitting straight up for the first 3 months or so. And he ended up taking time off from work, which he wasn't going to do because we needed both to be home. And we thought we were going crazy. And he'd done this before. And
Yeah.
I hadn't. And it was just, and I remember the first day, the second day that she was, after being born, my friend who'd had the kids, who had given me the CD, the birthing CD to listen to, all of which I know made that birthing experience, especially at home with our birthing village, just
Yeah.
absolutely extraordinary. But she was sucking on my finger, just to suck on something, because she'd been like draining me for 11 hours. And she started choking. And I'm like, she hasn't even been alive like outside of me for 24 hours, and I'm going to kill her. And my friend grabbed her by the feet and just hung her upside down,
Yeah.
like a little chicken in a meat shop or something. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden she just started sputtering and whatever. But that panic that
Oh, yeah.
set in, it's like I couldn't even keep her alive for 24 hours. Like, that's what was setting into my mind.
Yeah.
And then, it probably took, I don't know how many years for me to finally, until when she became a toddler, I felt like I could actually communicate and connect, and just
Yeah.
be a more effective parent. Because to an infant, I just was, none of our friends that were in Toronto had babies, had kids.
I know
Um,
that's part of it, right? And you're so
yeah,
isolated.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, you hear people say you need a village. The truth is you actually need a village.
uh-huh,
And when we talk about village, it's like, how many of us actually know our neighbor, like really know our neighbor, not just like, I'm taking the garbage and I'm waving at you, but actually know your neighbor. And that knowing that, if something went sideways, they'd be there for you. And I don't think we have that anymore. It's not everyone is so busy running around, and, you have entire neighborhood that are just, are basically empty during the day because everybody's gone,
hmm,
Yeah.
and there's no one in those houses. So it's not a community. It's not, or at least not in the, sense of like village that
yeah,
we intend it to be. Um, but yeah, I do think that for better or for worse, it's just really, really challenging time for new parents for that reason, especially for that reason. And just the fact that you had someone that was like, it's okay, here's what we do.
Yeah.
And you didn't end up having to call 911 and just had this horrible, horrible experience,
Yeah.
right? But it's already, like you said, it's shocking. Um, and that's why, honestly, that's the reason why I ended up doing this particular volunteering, because I was like, if I can save one person from the experience that was mine and support them in having a better experience, then it's worth it. And it
Yeah.
was literally that much. Like, even if I spend 5 years doing all these kinds of things, all I wanted is one person that was like, oh, okay. I saved her months and months of like anxiety, and yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, um, I mean, we can talk about babies all you want until the cows come home.
Yeah,
It's just
we're
always
It's
going to be a
amazing,
done with
like
this
the way the
conversation.
conversations just go, like they just
Yeah.
completely flow.
we're
Um,
we're talking about stuff that like technically this could have happened in 2019, this
Yeah.
conversation, and then after that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Oh,
There's
yeah.
extra
Exactly.
layers of challenge and
Yeah.
difficulty get piled on, and it's just like,
Well,
oh,
I think one of the things right now that's challenging is that for better or for worse, with everything that's going on, is that you're isolating people even more.
yeah.
mhm.
So I'm super mindful of that, and that's one of the things that I unfortunately have too many projects, but I'm super mindful that mom and babes are, in my book, something that is so precious, as you said, Alicia. I think that engagement is something you remember for the rest of your life. It's nothing you're ever going to forget. Those experience, the being pregnant, the giving birth, the couple years after that, where it's just a giant blur. And but those are those experiences that are life changing, that stays with you forever. So it's so important to be protective of those moments and those experience, I think.
Mhm. So, okay, so Corinne, are you working right now?
Yes, I am working right now. And it's funny because going about, talking about how did I go from having that kind of like experience and working with new moms and ended up working for government. So how does that work? Well, honestly, I ended up graduating with a silly amount of student loans, and uh, the government at the time was offering, and I think they still do, a loan. What's the word I'm thinking of? Like remediation or acceptance, or they would basically get rid of your student loans for if you worked for them for about 3.5 years. And so I did that, and I had a very clear path. I was like, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to come out, then I'm going to start my own counseling business, because I knew there was such a huge demand for it. And I had all the trainings, and I had taken my certification in infant massage, and in those 3.5 years, I'd done a certification in hypnotherapy, because what I was realizing also was that a lot of people were uh, like, one of the things about being a new mom is that it brings a lot of different things in your life. It triggers everything that you've been struggling, or it just brings all these things that you're living with. And it's a incredible triggering experience, which I like to think is an opportunity for people to really look at, like you said, who are you
Yeah.
and what are these things that you're living with? And, I think that before you have kids, you can kind of like flail in the wind and do all kinds of different things, but there's a reality that happens when you have little people that are completely dependent on you. And so I think children's come, and their entire world is you for a first little while, and so they're so completely engaged with you and learning about who you are, that they're learning really, really easily and quickly what your triggers are,
Mhm.
which again, it can be overly, completely overwhelming for parents, but it's also an opportunity for you to be, basically slapped in the face to say what it is that you're needing to deal with on a daily basis, right? And so one of the things that I was very mindful of in my own experience was that I wanted to help others, but I also wanted to help me because I was conscious of the fact that if I was, quote unquote, fixing me, although that's not the right word, but just like engaging with the world and um, adapting and having that flexibility to be all that I could be to a certain degree. I knew that that was going to have a complete and direct reflection to my child. And so I think that's the part that was kind of left me into this whole experience and this whole direction was that I don't want to leave whatever baggage I have and whatever baggage was given to me by my parents and to pass it along. I was hoping that at the very least I could understand what this baggage was and I could, to a certain degree, mitigate passing it along, right? And so I ended up doing the hypnotherapy was very, very interesting because what it was doing, and that I guess it's how you utilize hypnosis, but you have the ability to go back and have this conversation with people or give them the opportunity to have this conversation with themselves really about what are your trigger, where do they come from, where is like why do you have these experience, and a lot of it is not conscious. And I remember this young woman said to me, "Yeah, I would love, to be engaging with you, and let's. I have this thing, and my mother-in-law is just driving me crazy, and we're having all this conversation." And I said, "Well, do you want to try it out and see with a regression, like where this comes from, and maybe it's an opportunity for you to really kind of see the dynamic between you and your mother-in-law." And so we do the regression, and which is pretty simple. It's basically you're just in a really, really calm meditative place, and you kind of focus on the feeling that you're having, and you just kind of follow that feeling back to like what is the first thing that comes to mind. And it turned out that it had nothing to do with her mother-in-law, but it had everything to do with her mother
Mm-hmm.
and an experience that she had had as a young child. And so I think that's the idea of like, there's so much that we are in the world out there um, being and not realizing all the impact of those historical pieces of these things that are happening, and how we engage in our lens and how we see the world is based on a lot of things that we've experienced previously. And so, this sometimes explains why people overreact to things that you're looking at them going, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would someone, cutting you off in traffic make you lose your mind, right? Like, this is just an example of that. So obviously, at some point in their life, they felt like they had no control, and that's the feeling that's being triggered, and it's not them in that moment. That's, just losing their mind about actually being cut off in traffic. So I mean, to make a long story short, yeah, the government thing was not supposed to be a long-term thing. It was just, it was
Thank
just
you,
a
government.
tool to get to where I needed to be. What's interesting about it, in my life, I've had many, many experiences of circumstances where I said I will never do this, and then I ended up doing it, and turned out not to be um, as bad as I thought it was going to be. I had a father that had been in the public service for many years and had said to me that it was the most horrible thing he had ever done, and that you should never anybody should ever do this because it was like a bad thing. And I actually got in for with the intent of just utilizing it for a couple of years and then moving on to having a career doing something else. But I found some incredible people. I found some people that were very creative, very smart, very dedicated, very motivated, and I was part of teams that were really, really great. So, and I ended up learning all kinds of things that I thought was interesting, and ended up helping in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Helping people like ask information from government, helping people make sure that when they were managing information, they were doing it appropriately. And I honestly felt like I was making a difference, but in a completely different way. And yeah, and then you find yourself in a situation where there's complexity in the world right now that are just like infinite, and then you have to make decision about your health and decision about your how you see things. And I think that lens that we're talking about is important because this is right now, I think there's very different kind of information out there, and people are having to absorb this information, put it through their own lens and how they see the world, and appropriately in their mind a response to it. So, and and it's funny because I don't have any animosity towards people that may have animosity towards me for all kinds of reason or because of choices that I've made. I just feel like people are on their own path. They
Mhm.
have different level of, awakeness maybe is the right word, or awareness is maybe a better one. Um, and and we're all on our own individual path to get to that place. And I have empathy because I think people are struggling no matter which way their lens are, right?
Yeah.
They're just struggling in different ways.
Yeah. The thing that's really come up for me in the last couple of years is has been to remind myself that um, when we're experiencing other people and how we interact with them, and there's sometimes a real misalignment where normally you would think, well, this is pretty basic stuff, but we're just not seeing eye to eye. Like I'm not sure how I can
Yeah.
uh, either get what they're saying from their perspective or have them understand where I'm coming from. Um, so that's definitely going on. But what I've been trying to remind myself and bring myself back to the kind of like this is really what's happening is that um, whatever each of us is experiencing is like that's what we're putting out there, and that's why we're getting back exactly who we are. Like it's that thing of you experience it. You're experiencing um, who you really are, not what you say you are. Whatever. It's like this is whatever's in the media, whatever is the drama going on is just like that's me putting out into the world, and I'm seeing this reflection, and I'm so absorbed by the reflection. I assume everyone else is seeing what I'm seeing,
Hmm.
feeling what I'm feeling because of what's going on, and of course the other part or component of that is like it's all little. I call it pixels. Like it's there's a bigger picture, but like we've only got our own little pixel,
Yeah.
and we're so focused on it we forget like we're part of a bigger picture. But this is like it's a bit of a crazy time, but it's supposed to, I think, to as I said before, remind us that well, this is what you signed up for when you came here. Like there was going to be struggle, there was going to be contrast, there was going to be experiences that you would rather not go through, but it's okay because it's another opportunity, as you said, Corinne, to remind yourself like I'm okay. Like I trust who I am, and I'll get through this. I have resilience, and I have belief in myself and in life. And this whole, if I can reduce it to an oversimplification, is sort of an example of seeing the world as either friendly or not friendly.
Yeah.
Like Einstein says, like you got to decide that once and for all. Like, is life friendly or is it not? And
Hmm.
then everything else flows from that, right?
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that I said in the rally is that all of this is about fear. And and it really is unfortunate. Fear, and I remember figuring this out quite early on, that fear was not, I mean, there's a certain degree to which fear is helpful, but I think in a lot of ways in our society, it's turned into this anxiety that's controlling us, that's controlling how we approach the world. And someone said something that really resonated with me, that that disconnect that we're having in some ways is about our lack of faith and our lack of, connection with that consciousness that you were talking about, Licia. So I think we need to connect more with that spirituality, because if you do, then the fear of dying, or the fear of, because I think a lot of this is the fear of dying, and being sick. And I think that when you get you move away from that and you start really kind of focusing on being resilient. It's how you're gonna, that's how you're moving away from the insanity that we see right now, for better or for worse. Because I think like you said, that lens that you have is very much based on how you see the world and how you perceive it.
Yeah.
And I think you give control to others when you are completely at the mercy of what is being communicated to you. I mean, critical thinking, I like to think that I've always had a certain level of that in my mind, but I think I've like had to be so engaged with it lately, like to the point where there's things that I've taken for granted that now I'm like, ah, isn't that interesting? I never questioned that. It was just something I assumed. But is it really correct? Because now, if all of these other things are not quite accurate, then what else is it that I just assumed that I was comfortable with and was told to me that is not necessarily true?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to jump in here because there were so many things that Honey Bunch that you said that I agree with, but I think for me, where you say that you were talking about, shows us who we really are. For me, I feel like there is so much collective consciousness wrapped up in who we think we are
Mm,
that really this is an opportunity to get back and connect and realign, re-engage, whatever word you want to use,
yeah,
to sort of realize, like Karine was talking about, that we're all on a journey, and the collective is made up of individuals, and like Karine was saying, everybody is on their individual journey wherever they are at their level of awareness. And I believe that that level of awareness, it'll dip and cycle and ebb and flow and spiral, however you want to say that. And so for me, it really, it's been interesting over the last 2 years how I have sort of moved away from sort of this notion of for the good of the collective or for the good of the community to the good of the individual and what is best and highest for me. And when I can really ground myself in that, whatever my truth is for me,
yeah,
then I am that much more connected to the collective, or to, just I am showing up more fully,
yeah,
more mindfully, intentionally, on purpose, as consciousness, expressing through and as me uniquely. And for me, I think that is what is important, and that's a big flip for me. Like, it's been a huge flip, and I think that, for me, that's where sort of the friction or the frustration, or the border, the trouble over the border, trouble at the border, that Maria Namath would call, where like, this is sort of where I am, this is where I want to be, this is, like, who we think we are, but this is who we truly are, kind of thing. And like
yeah,
getting over that border. And I can't speak, for other countries because I don't live in other countries, and I don't even live in other provinces, just living in BC. But what
yeah,
I feel is happening in our province and across our country, for the most part, because there are territories and provinces that everybody is doing something slightly different. But I feel like this idea of the collective, the collective, we all have to do what's best for the collective, is completely obliterating the idea of the collective is made up of individuals, and what is
yes,
happening for the good of the collective is not for the good of the individual. And so when you were talking, like 15, 20 minutes ago or whatever, about the connection with babies and mom. And we're back. Okay, my computer ran out of disk space, and so we had to switch over recording capabilities to Glenn. Okay, so I think what I was, let me gather my thoughts. I was going back to what, Corinne, you were talking about, the connection with baby and mom. Oh, did I
yeah.
lose
That
it?
collective, you were talking about this
Is,
whole concept of collection.
The individual, the benefit of the individual, you're realizing that that's the key thing because
what was I
this
going to say? One mind.
I
Yeah.
know.
Um,
I mean, for me, it's interesting what you're saying because I do, there's definitely a push for like we need to be, it's all about the collective. The truth of the matter is, I always use the analogy of the plane. The plane is going down, you have two masks, all the masks come down, you need
yeah,
to put your own mask first before you put somebody else's mask on.
yeah.
And I think that's super important. Now, am I saying that you have to be selfish? No. And what's really, really interesting about this whole concept of collective is that there is a certain level of need to support each other, but it cannot be at your own, um, like, you can't not be negatively impacted by it. So
Hmm.
we're stronger as a group if the individuals are stable and strong.
Hmm.
If the entire collective is being impacted negatively, it doesn't work. That's not
Yeah,
how this is meant to be in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. So there's a certain balance there that needs to occur. I do think that humans are pack animals, so we need each other. Absolutely. Like having the ability to,
Mm.
that I was talking about the village, right? So we need that village, but you need each individual in that village to be strong. So if you think of a famine, for example, if everyone is starving, no one is doing well. Like it's just the reality of things. If everyone is able to do some level of agriculture and taking care of each other, then they have the ability to exchange. And I'm just kind of using a really simple analogy here, right? So everyone has their own garden, and then you can, make a soup because you have all the ingredient that you need. But everybody individually are able to take care of themselves. And
yeah,
so as a whole, then you can accomplish more. But I think the concept of like, I have to do all these things to you know and it doesn't matter what is impacted, what the impact to me is, I just need to do this for others. You're not going to be helpful. It's not going to be something that's successful. And I know that because personally right now I'm trying to do a bunch of different things for a bunch of different people because I feel very strongly that there's a lot of individuals that are really struggling through all of this. And I have to remind myself on the daily basis that I'm no good to anybody if I'm not in a
yeah,
position of strength.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I still don't remember what I was going to say. It might come back, it might not. But Honey Munch, did you have
No,
something to add to that directly?
just I'm being an idiot for a second. I just when you said you've got the two masks, I thought, well, you could both put both two masks on yourself because
Yes,
that's
so
sometimes recommended these days. Um,
exactly.
but
I was thinking of the oxygen mask, but
I
yes,
know. I think
exactly.
everyone knows
Yeah,
that. It's worth
yeah,
pointing out. I just had a thing, one of my social media things, um, from Desmond Tutu, who recently passed away. Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. I like that overwhelm word.
yeah. Well, it's the butterfly effect. I'm a
Yeah,
huge believer in that. And it's like, and I remember thinking, you help one person, you don't know what this one person will do in the world. And
Yeah,
so, you save is the wrong word, but if you give hope for one person for that moment,
yeah,
then maybe you change the entire parallel. Like if
yeah,
one person decides that they're going to take care of themselves um, and not kill themselves, for example, and then they move in the world and they have children and these children's children's, and maybe one day a descendant of that person saves the world. Like I'm being completely ridiculous in that moment, but you just never know what the impact are because it could be as simple as smiling at someone or um, just letting them go in front of you and in line, or you know I think all of these tiny moments are extremely important and we just overlook them and we don't even pay attention or don't think about how we can make the world a better place, little things by little things. So I agree with Glenn.
yeah. Last,
okay, yeah, yeah. No, um
it's like this is like restarting a fire, like you know, blowing on the fire embers to like, no, it's gonna go again. So last year, go, you know, we've
So okay,
blown
just
some
ask me
air.
another question. I can just make the fire go good.
well, Okay, so one of the things that you're doing, and I mean, this is how we met. We met you at the Freedom Rally, or well, I did, and I forgot that
Yes.
Glenn didn't actually meet you there. But met you at the Freedom Rally a couple of months ago in Victoria,
Yeah.
where people were, and this is something that happens all over the world, sometimes on the same day, sometimes not. But these are gatherings where people are coming together to celebrate, honor, talk about, and sort of consider how to move forward, um, just honoring the freedom of choice, like
Yes.
freedom of choice, freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, education, bodily autonomy, like whatever, just freedom that is inherent in every single one of us. And
Yes.
so I guess, how did you end up being asked to be a speaker, or did you just say, hey, I want to come up there and talk?
No, so um, uh, Workers United, which is a organization, I think that's mostly based out of Vancouver. Um, we're organizing a rally in Vancouver, and I think it was Kelowna, and they wanted to have one in Victoria. So they reached out to, I'm a participating in, or I'm linked to a group of individuals that are being impacted by the mandate within BC government. And the person that was sort of involved with this group became sick, and she's like, would you be willing to just go and attend this one meeting that they're having? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll go and see if I can do anything. And um, the interesting thing is that I thought they had organized a rally, but they really hadn't organized anything. They were hoping that we were going to organize something. And we were literally like 5 days away from the date at which they wanted to do this, and there was
Wow.
nothing organized. And I had seen this really beautiful rally in a video from Calgary, I believe, and I think a similar one in Toronto, and where people just stood there in silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, hey, this is super easy to organize. You don't need to have a speaker. You just have people stand there with signs or no sign within a certain distance from each other and be quiet in that moment.
Yeah.
And uh, and I said, okay, well, let's do that. And it was unbelievably powerful.
Hmm.
Um, Someone brought a audio, and the audio was the song "Stand by Me," and I'm gonna get choked up. I think it was definitely um, a moment of realization that the world that we knew was gonna be impacted. And I'm sorry, I didn't expect to do that. Yeah, it was really, really touching because it was a lot of strangers just coming together and um, just having the ability to be in that moment together. And just one of the things that I said before, I said, this is an opportunity for you. I said, I don't know if you've ever seen the research about praying and the intentions. And I said, even if you don't believe it, you can always visualize what you want the world to be like. And I said, take that moment. And it was like half an hour of like silence. And maybe that was too much, honestly, but um, we just wanted people to just kind of sit with that feeling because we knew people were grieving. Um, we're shocked, honestly, and facing some really incredibly difficult decisions. Um, and we thought, if we can just kind of put it in that moment and just have this consciousness, as you called it, and the intent as a group, and just be together. And so I was there, and interestingly enough, the organizer of the meeting where you met me was like literally standing next to me, and
Hmm.
he heard me speak. Just kind of organizing people, and I was making jokes because I was asking people to line up so that I would look pretty. That's what's neurosis in me. I was like, I wanted it to look a certain way, right?
Yeah.
So I'm telling people to line up, and they're just, not really listening to me. And I made a jokes about how, I understand the very challenge that all school teachers have of telling people to line up. And, I'm kind of using humor because, I mean, and, like you're telling people what to do and they're being told what to do. And that's like, they're kind of getting a little bit frustrated with, people telling them what to do. So you have to be kind of diplomatic in how you approach things. But I think he liked it and he kind of came to me and he said, "Hey, I'm having another rally a couple weeks later and would be, if you're interested in speaking." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't my best performance. We were literally 2 days away from our mandate being implemented. Everyone was having a bit of a moment. So we had like thousands and thousands of questions. Yeah.
Karine, can I just interrupt for a second? Because there will be people listening who are not from BC, who are not from Canada. So, what is the mandate that you're talking about?
Okay.
Just like in a couple of
Um,
sentences.
so basically, there's a policy, an HR policy that came down on October 5th that communicated that all BC government employee had to be fully vaccinated on November 22nd. So, and then there were some level of exemptions that people could apply for. And I just wasn't sure if I could utilize the certain words. So that's why I wasn't going into
Yeah.
details about it. But good point. So, yeah, and I think there's so many different kinds of questions that people have about like, well, so why don't you, I've had friends saying, well, that's your job. You have a mortgage, you have kids, you have a family to support. So, you know, just go and get this, vaccination or job or whatnot. And, um, personally, I've had a number of people say that, health wise, this would not be a good choice for me. And not only that, but uh, the disease itself has been in our house. So I don't like, I know what it looks like. There's no, it's one thing to hear people telling you what it looks like, but when you have it in your own house and you see the impact of it and you see that people recover and, um, it kind of takes away the monster attached to it.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
the whatever people tell you is now your lens is different because you're impacted by your own experience of it, right? So, I think everyone has to do a risk analysis. And every single time you go and have any kind of medical intervention, you have to have that risk analysis. And that's part of those conversation that you have with your doctors and um, with yourself, with the research that you do. And but yeah, so that was the mandate itself. So yeah, I was asked to speak at that rally, and honestly, I had very little time to get ready for it. So what you saw was what you saw. So who do you think you are is literally what I babbled for about 20 minutes in that rally. And it was funny because I said to people, I said, it's a line in the sand of what you're comfortable with, and talking about the collective to think that this is about a disease, I personally don't think it's about the disease. And so, um, how far is that line in the sand that you're willing to be comfortable with? And how far does that go? So, when people tell you that we're taking away your children from you, or that you're not allowed to eat meat anymore, or that you cannot possess the firearms, and maybe people are comfortable with all of the above, which is, um, but I think at some point each of us is going to have our own line where we're
Yeah.
just going to go like, yeah, I'm not comfortable with that. And unfortunately, um, at some point the lines may be so far that it might be hard to go back and come back from it. And that's where the rallies come from. It's about saying, I want you to be mindful that maybe
Yeah.
you're taking the vaccination for all kinds of different reasons, and you felt comfortable. You did that risk analysis for yourself, and but where does that line go? because now you're mandating it for
Yeah.
people. And so um, now you're telling others to do this. And so if government has that level of power, then where is that line? Because it could be that they tell you what to do with your property. It could be that they tell you what to do with what you eat. It could be that they tell you what to do um, with how you're raising your children, which I think to a certain degree is already happening.
Yeah.
And and just being conscious of it. You know, you're talking about consciousness is those are really challenging things. I think people are overwhelmed. I think they have been overwhelmed for a long time. I mean, forget anything that's going on right now. I've been saying for years now that I'm on a rat race where I feel like a rat in a little wheel. And I had when my son was 16 one day, he looked at me, and I remember having, I will always remember that day because I was just like, oh man, he is telling me the truth as a child can sometimes do. And he said to me, he said, Mom, you're asking me to have straight A's and having really good marks in high school. And he goes, and the reasoning for that is so I can go to a good college where I'm going to have to work hard. And I'm going to do that in order to get a good job so that I can make money, so I can have a big house and a big car and have mortgages and work and maybe, if I'm lucky, have some vacation. And I'm going to keep working and working in order for me to retire. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, I'm not sure that that sounds great. Right? And it's like, it doesn't. Like, my husband and I were working like 10-hour days, sometimes more than that. And we'd come home and be completely exhausted and just plug yourself in front of the TV and sometimes I just like wrap some energy to make sure that I have a half decent meal for my kids, but I'm not doing it out of love. So, that whole consciousness and energy and whether what your intents are, you're not making food with love. You're making food out of desperation. And
Yeah.
this is what you're absorbing and what you're giving to your family, right? And then you're like, you're just kind of like zoning out. So you're not even engaging with your spouse. I mean, people are talking about the divorce rates and how incredibly crazy it is and how people are like disconnected and going in different directions. Well, if you're not spending time and making that conscious decision to engage in your relationship, and that's not just your spouse, it's your friends, it's your coworkers, it's your family. I mean, I had a conversation with a woman this week where I literally called her and I said, you know what? I haven't spoken to you really outside of like work conversation in 4 years. And I said, that's horrible. I mean, we used to be able to go and, maybe have breakfast together before work started. But things had just gone so insane work wise that I was like, I've disconnected. I like from friends, from family, from everything. And it's like, it's almost like I have to schedule a time to be like, I'm going to call my father and have a conversation with him today. That's horrible. That's not how life should be.
Yeah.
So the good news is, out of all of this, people are waking up to the reality that this is insane and this is not normal. And you watch all these shows about zombie. I think we have become zombies. Like, it's not because we got some kind of virus. I think people have become zombies. So we need to disconnect. And I think everything that's happening is an opportunity to disconnect because it's literally slapping you in the face, going, "Wait a second. You've agreed to this life that's not living."
Yeah, that's okay. Jordan Peterson, he wrote the National Post article a few or that came out in the National Post a few days ago. But when he, it had a certain title, but when he posted it on YouTube, it was called "It's Time to Live." And as you're talking, I'm thinking the words engagement, triggering, and or triggers and choice, just keep coming back to
Yes.
me as you're talking. And even when you're talking about that line in the sand, for me, I'm thinking sort of there's two lines in the sand that come up for me. There's the sort of, the one you're talking about, the one that we can't come back from. Like it'll, like the
Yeah.
goalpost will have been moved so far, that line will be like so far down, there is no coming back from it, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so it is up to us, every single one of us individually, not to go and blame and shame and point fingers, but what's my part in this? What's my role in this? What's my responsibility? How am I
Yeah.
accountable? And how am I showing up, in terms of the, what's going on, how this line in the sand is being drawn? Am I okay with that? And then
Yeah.
the other part of it for me is that, where, I mean, there's so much judgment and criticism floating around
Yeah.
from so many, that I think is maybe one of the things that is being triggered, not just on the individual level but on a collective level,
Yes.
of, if you think differently from me, you're crazy, you're wrong, you're part of the problem, you're a pox on society, kind of thing. But to, let go, like it, let go, not in terms of like brush it away, but let go of like, like having your claws in the judgment and criticism.
Mhm.
Let go enough to sort of like really, really, really consider, what's my line in the sand in terms of what am I, for me, going
Yeah.
to hold on to, that, what is true and right for me. And I've said it before on the show. I have not taken the COVID vaccine because I feel it is not right for me. I also
Hmm.
don't think I need it. Pretty sure I probably had it before it like
Yeah.
in around November of 2019, before it was the thing that it became. Um, but I don't know. There may come a
Yeah.
time where it's like it is the right thing for me to do. And so, like
Like the
for
risk
me,
analysis, right?
yes, right, the risk analysis. And
Yeah.
so like it's like we had a conversation with my mom, who's visiting, a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this, and really listened to each other. And the thing that comes up for me, which is probably, one of the toughest things, but it's not happening in this moment. It's not, what I'm aware of in this moment. It's a few months down the road, on the trajectory that I'm choosing to focus my attention on, is our daughter's high school graduation. Will I be able to be present at my daughter's high school graduation if there is a passport, a vaccine passport mandate in effect?
Hmm.
And I was thinking in terms of like, well, my mom lives in Alberta, and what if she died, and I had to go to Alberta, would I get it then? And I'm like, well, how is that more important and more valid or valuable or meaningful in my life than my daughter's, this incredible rite of passage in graduating, high school, and knowing she's probably going to move back to Ontario after that, and then, that's it. Like, she's not
Hmm.
living with us anymore. She is really, out on her own, kind of thing. Those are big things to weigh. I mean, we had a guest on our show, last month, I think, and he was talking about, how for him it sort of can't comes down to, at least in the moment we were having this conversation, that if it becomes necessary for him to do his good work in the world, then he will seriously consider,
Hmm.
getting it getting it. But I just, the idea of, government saying you have to do this in order to keep your job, you have to do this in order to, go certain places or engage in certain activities, or even, go to school and get an education, the have to part, that's the thing that I take issue with. And I there are times when I'm really riled up about it, and then there are times where it's like, listen, I can choose to be riled up about it, or I can choose to just ground myself in what I believe to be true, and
Hmm.
just move forward in that, that frame of mind, that frame of thought. That's one of the reasons I host a weekly meditation, in our home. We come together with people, some are jabbed, some are not, doesn't matter. We're all coming together to just tap into that innate wisdom that is the essence of who we all are to begin with, and live and move forward from that, rather than getting caught up in what's on the news, what are the latest stats today, what's Dr. Bonnie Henry saying, what's the government of Canada saying, our prime minister scolding people for not making the right decision. I guess that's a little riled up right there, but
No, that's all good.
but
Yeah.
like that's where the choice comes in, and we have that freedom of choice. Oh, even if it seems like we don't, we always are free in how we respond and what we
Yes.
choose to put our attention on and focus on, and what kind of energy we're gonna just engage in.
Hmm.
There's no question there.
Yeah, I know. And you're bringing up some, yeah, people have had to make some really, really challenging decision. I had what I consider friends now. Her dad was dying in a different country, and she tried really, really hard to get there, and she just couldn't. And it was very heartbreaking when she found out that he had passed away. She never got to say goodbye. So, on the other hand, I have friends of mine that got vaccinated because they wanted to be able to coach their kids' high school football team. So, I think, like I said, it depends on what your line in the sand is. Some people are, what the things that they find most important in their lives, and in that risk analysis of like how dangerous do they think it is to their health and whatnot. But it's such a personal question, such a personal decision, that I do very much struggle with the idea that someone else could make that kind of decision for you. And I think for me personally is the trust that I have in pharmaceutical company. Like I think, um, you know, as part of my work, I support BC Coroner Service, and the opiate crisis has been a complete nightmare. And I've had some level of interest in the whole, like, where is it coming from? And there's a lot of really interesting documentary, even on Netflix for that matter, that speaks to where this is, how it all came to be, and how much money people made, and the push for certain medication and the impact on very healthy, happy, young people that just for some reason got injured, and then went through this like rabbit hole. And so, like, I think sometimes we have a tendency of just like focusing on really, really small amount, like a period or a particular scenario, without looking at the big, big picture. And I think that's important. It's that whole critical thinking that's like unbelievably important to keep in mind. But I like what you were saying. Like, I think having those meditation meeting are so incredibly important, at the very least, for people to ground themselves. I think it's so easy in this realm of fear and judgment, as you mentioned, and disconnection. Because I think, even though I don't think we're particularly connected to start with, I think it's putting some division in families, it's putting division in marriages, it's putting divisions between friends, and which is really challenging people. So you're under stress to start with. You're feeling like, either you're thinking there's, this very challenging disease out there that might kill you, or you think that, on the other hand, this is government is basically trying to coerce you in doing something that's not necessarily good for you. So either way, it's not a good scenario, and it's very stressful. And then you add that challenge, that very personal challenge that is impacting you directly. And so whether you're a parent or a child, you're worried about your loved ones, and you just want them to be safe. And
Yeah.
um, so if you're in the group that believes that this is a very challenging disease, and everyone you love that is not vaccinated, you're very worried about them. And if you're in the camp that believes that this is not such a great, you know, that disease is not particularly challenging, but the solution to it is dangerous, then you're worried about everybody that you love that's taking the vaccine. So either way, it's not a good scenario. You're worried, right? And so that fear and that challenge is impacting your health no matter what. Let's be
Exactly.
clear, because it's that
Exactly.
whole energy piece, right? That worry, that intent. So you're in your life, the air you breathe in your house is full of that intent. The food you're eating is full of that intent. Um, and now all of the things that calm you down, that ground you, such as connecting with people, hugging, um, you know, just even like there's so many different things about all of this that's just so challenging for me, like that I just think that it was planned in a way to just really impact those relationships in such a crucial way, and it's so unfortunate. But at the end of the day, I think grounding yourself and having the ability to kind of disconnect for it, for even if it's just an hour of meeting with people and just being in that moment, is so precious
Yeah.
and so important. And it's important for your health. It's important for your mental health. It's important with um, just that sense of peace for yourself, that grounding, right?
It's, when I was just going back to the videos from Calgary and from Toronto with the first responders, the rallies, the peaceful rallies where they just stood in silence, the ones you were talking about. And just watching those videos, just thinking about them right now. I mean, the trails of that energy, of that power, that
Yeah,
presence, that intention, that focus,
yeah,
that was experienced during those times, like it lingers, it's still around because it's all in the now, right? But it's even though we've gone to the two rallies downtown and we've heard people speak and saw an altercation at the last one, and for the most part people are standing there peacefully and maybe cheering every now and then or something like that. um, for me, watching those two videos has been more impactful because it's like it transcends words, it transcends language. It's about the energy and people standing there. I mean, standing, but like standing, like so firmly rooted and grounded in purpose and intent. It's just incredible. it's
yeah,
it's it's extraordinary, and it just resonates on such an incredible, so many levels, and connects people, in completely different ways, because they're not getting caught up in the words and what people are saying and listening and whatever. They're just being
yeah.
present.
I'll send you the link to ours because there was a video that was made of it, and it's
Okay, yeah. And that was story. And yours, it was in Vancouver or it was in
no,
Kelowna?
that was the one in Victoria.
It
Yeah,
was in. Oh,
Victoria,
oh,
BC.
okay. Yeah, no, I didn't see that one. Okay,
Yeah. So that was probably it was 2 weeks before the one where you met me.
okay.
You know what those something just clicked for me there. What comes across when you watch those? Well, they're almost like a vigil, right? They're just they're.
Yeah.
It takes me back to when before we left Toronto. I went to a couple of midnight vigils when they had the missing and murdered Indigenous women vigils, and it was like, it was kind of exciting to kind of go so late at night into the park, and the politicians, I think it was Carolyn Bennett or someone, showed up and did their thing, and the local councillor, and but like the cool thing was just being there with a candle and saying nothing and just being together with the people and just like honoring what you thought was important about people, right? About people who weren't there, but because you're there to reflect, they're there, they're
Yeah,
with you, right? But what the image that came up there when you were both describing the Calgary and the other your own Victoria vigil slash um, gathering is like you said grounding, and it reminded me, it's like standing like a tree stands,
Mm.
yeah,
knowing that when you're beside one another, you don't have to be touching because you're connected through your roots to one another. You
yeah,
make your own root system together by being with other people. So you're standing on the earth,
yeah,
but you are connected to one another, and it's another way to remind ourselves that, like, like that's what trees are. That's what, there's we forget the different aspects of things like trees and birds and different creatures, that they are there symbolically to remind us who we are and how we're connected and how we're all one, right? But we can only be all one when we are truly who we are individually. It's a really weird paradox. It's like that word individual. It means both a single being, but also that which cannot be divided. It's like that weird thing, right? So that's what that's sort of reminding me that that's what that is. It's like we can do this at any time, but we can help one another to to heal ourselves by being a model, or just being in presence with someone else, just being there. You don't have to say anything. You just be there with them, and they're there for you, and then together you're rebuilding, and you're kind of you're choosing to focus on what's important and what's truly fulfilling and valuable for you, because then that as we said before, that flows out into the universe, and like rebuilds in a way that is beneficial to all and nourishing to the self, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. No, it was, I think that's what I liked so much about it is it wasn't people telling you what to think or just getting you all riled up or trying to get, the crowd fired up, but it was more about individuals' experience of it, of just, standing there, and they probably all thought about different things. I mean, I suspect some of them were looking and thinking about their grocery list for the week, but there's, a lot of them that were, I'm hoping had a moment to think about what do they want their life to look like moving forward. Because I think that's the piece. We kind of have to focus about this is an opportunity to make things different, and how do we want this to look like? And and I think someone said to me something very interesting that um, the because there's a lot of like, ooh, is this the end of the world? We have all these things now, right? And so you think about the um, that maybe you need to have things be in chaos before you restructure things. And I think I like to think that that's basically where we're at right now. It's just some level of chaos, but it's flashing to us all the things that are not working. So um, yeah, I think this is an opportunity. I'm hopeful. I mean, I don't think you still have to make sure that your family is taken care of and everybody is comfortable and okay, but um, there's a lot of things that I think are not working, and we're at the mercy of a lot of very big businesses, and I don't think that's the smartest thing for us. We give away our control. So now, and it's not necessarily just government, it's just in general, like the fact that most of us have to go to a grocery store to get food, or that we have doctors that we barely know, and they're not family doctors, or most of us are just walking to a walking clinic and see a complete stranger for like 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, that's not healthcare, right? So, and not that I'm not saying doctors are not working very hard and don't have knowledge and expertise. I'm just saying that you don't get the full picture. You're not talking about what you're eating and your exercise level, and it's like there's so much more to health that I don't think we're paying attention to. Um, and going back to what we were saying about the intent in your lives and what you're thinking, your mental health and the energy around you, and all of these things that no one ever talks about, is not taught at all in medical school, Western medical school. So, I think there's opportunity to really look at things differently, and, you know, structure things in a way that is more supportive to us as a species than how things are structured right now. Um, I think the fact that we have to have these incredible, crazy mortgages, and be completely worried about interest rates, and having to focus on working really, really hard to get the next better job in order to have more money to be able to, take a breather, is it's not like we said, it's not living. So we need to have a better plan for that. Um, and I think that, there's that concept of like where there's way too many people on the earth, and repeatedly people have said that's not true. I don't know if you ever saw the special on or documentary on Netflix that's called Kiss the Ground, and it talks about the whole concept of climate change, and it's really, really interesting. And it talks about really that the issues that people are talking about is not about us human beings doing stupid things. Well, to a certain degree it is, but it's really about how we have approached agriculture in general, and how we approach our engagement with nature. And it's a beautiful, beautiful documentary if you have a chance to go and look at it. But it just kind of puts things in perspective, and it speaks to how we are consistently thinking that we know better than nature, and that, you know, we don't. It's one of the things that I said previously. It's like I always go back to the cavemen. Our body is an incredibly amazing machine. It's been tweaked in a way that we have the ability to survive incredible things, adapt to incredible things. And the reality of that is, instead of being so grateful for it and taking care of it, we consistently try to do stupid things to it because in the name of, science. And this is not just now. We're talking about, like, you can go hundreds of years. We used to bleed each other, going, "Hey, this is the great thing. You get the bad stuff out." And it's like, so maybe there's circumstances where this is fine, but there's probably a lot of circumstances where you really shouldn't be doing that. So, um, yeah, I think we need to go back to how we engage with ourselves, how our body works, and just support that instead of constantly trying to, genetically modify your food and your body. Like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The one freedom rally we went to, where last time I met you, um, partway through there was another demonstration passing by on its way to the legislature, where some people were heard all the noise and the banging of drums and the yelling and the chanting, and they thought, oh, here's like the anti, here's people complaining about what we're here to address. As in, they thought of it as like, oh, the other side of like the argument, but
Yeah,
no, uh,
it was a climate.
it was the old growth
Old growth
forest
forest.
issue,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And of course they've got their own, valid thing to focus their attention on.
Hmm.
and and again, there's a little bit of tension there, um, when you're demonstrating anything to get attention. You're kind of like in this resistant mode, because you have to be resisting the kind of way that the world is run, that allows, growth, logging of old growth forests or whatever.
Hmm.
But you know there are people in that crowd, different ages, different backgrounds, different
Yeah,
philosophies, who are
yeah.
going to look at it and go, we have to fight this. And then there's others like, no, man, this, like, we got to be cool and peaceful. So there's always that dynamic and that spectrum of opinions and perspectives, as there was in the reality that we were there to
Yeah, exactly.
engage with.
There's a
Um,
whole different way of engaging change, right? Like there's literally books and books, and there's probably, I suspect, degrees on like change management. Like it's a huge, like how do you get people to change? How do you get policies change? How do you change government's perspective? How do you change society's perspective and culture? Um, I mean, and people have their own feelings and thoughts about it for sure. And you have to meet people halfway. There's circumstances where, honey does more than vinegar, and there's circumstances where, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. But going back to the whole concept of consciousness, I think we have more power than we think we do. And if words have that much power on people, and how much, and thoughts, then, I like the idea of praying. I like the idea of meditation. I like the idea of coming together as a source of energy and intent. What is really interesting in all of this is we've obviously had some leaders in the freedom movement, and some international ones. And, people have said to them, well, are you worried for your safety? You're speaking against some powers that have quite a bit of reach. And recently I've had a number of interviews where people have said, we're not worried because we have people that are praying over us. We have people that are telling us that they're keeping us safe. And it was different religion and different belief systems. Some was like indigenous people. And I thought, how interesting. There's so much we don't understand. Um, you know, I do believe that we have the ability to have to impact change in ways that we have never even conceptualized, or that maybe is not well known. And I think the best way is to do all of the above and have plans for every single one of them. Hence
Mhm.
the sometimes there's not enough me to do all these different things. But it doesn't take anything away from anyone to take, 5, 10 minutes every day, and just, even if it's first thing in the morning, you stay in your bed and you just put those intention out there, or whether it's at night, you fall asleep and you put it out there, and it doesn't take anything away. It's like, there's action of the week that people are engaging in, and whether it's, write your MLA, or write a letter to somebody else that's doing something that you don't agree upon. And Glenn, that can be for, cutting trees down, or it could be forcing people to take a vaccine, or it could be, um, you know, a company that's putting chemicals in the water, like whatever that may be. I think there's ability for us to look at actions at it different ways, right? And I think the intent one is one that we don't tend to pay a lot of attention to, which was why I think the rallies where no one was said anything, there were no engagement. You couldn't, interestingly enough, there were a group of people that walked down the streets and were all like, rah, rah, rah. No one paid attention to them, and they had no impact at all because there wasn't that kind of emotion. It wasn't that kind of engagement. It was literally just about us in that moment as a group, understanding that we were all here with similar intent, and that we had the power to put that intent to be from a fear and a worry to something that potentially was positive in terms of like how we see um, things changing in our world, right?
As you're talking, Corinne, I'm thinking of a different perspective on the march, the old growth forest rally demonstration that was also happening. For me, that's also a reminder there's more going on in the world. Even you talking about you can do this for this for this. There's more going on in the world
I
than
know.
the unfoldment of COVID. And do I get vaccinated or not get vaccinated? Am I going to lose my job if I don't, kind of thing? There's more. There's so much more. Just like we are so much more than
Yeah.
our jobs, our relationships, what we think, what others think about ourselves, expectations, our feelings, whatever, you want to sort of fill in the blank there.
Yeah.
There's so much more to the world experience
Yeah.
than this one thing that has been such a central focus for most of the world for the last
Yes.
almost 2 years. So,
Absolutely.
another another reminder, another opportunity to just engage on a bigger, more expansive level rather than just,
Yeah.
looking at the one detail and pull out, like you were talking about the big picture, earlier in the conversation.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
and the
no, I have
lens,
friends that went to Mexico and they said COVID is not there. There's like no one talks about it. No one's wearing masks. There's no mandate. And another friend go to Bali and they said the same thing. This is not happening. We had people that went to northern Alberta and said, yeah, they think we're nuts. Like this is not part of their daily lives. And
yeah,
so I do. I think, there's a lot of different things that are going on in our society that I think we need to pay attention to. And unfortunately, this is absorbing all of our energy and thoughts. And, the uh, like everything to do with the opiate crisis hasn't gone away. It's actually gone worse. And
yeah.
so, um, and that's just one of the many issues that we're finding ourselves in. There's the mental health issues. I mean,
Oh,
I could go on and on about that. That's just so challenging. We've turned our correctional centers into mental health hospitals. I mean, there's just, and now you're finding yourself correctional officers having to take mental health training when, they didn't sign up for this. They
yep,
are, if they wanted to be doing that kind of work, they would have gone to psychiatric nursing, right?
yeah,
And I'm not saying they're not doing a great job. I'm just saying like is the judicial system the right way to approach mental health? Like,
yeah,
I don't think so. Um, the educational system. I mean, I will be honest with you. I have two kids and they have learning disability, and it's, the way that they have incredible people working and have, the best of intention, but the system is not working. It's
yeah.
just not working. Um, I don't, and there's all kinds of conversation that we may have about how to fix that for sure, but you know, there's a struggle in terms of like how do we teach math? How does it make sense? How do we teach how to read and write in a way that there's no kids left behind? Um, how do we approach all of these things where right now you have a large group of people, of kids, and you have one teacher that's trying to do the best that they can in that environment when in fact, there's tons of research that boys and girls have different way of approaching things.
Hmm.
And then independently from individual learning perspective, which can be different within these cohorts. So, I think we have approached education from a manufacturing kind of perspective, right? And it's not working. So, what did they say that what is crazy is to, do the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome. Like,
Insanity. Yeah, yep, yep.
yeah. So there's so many different things that are happening. And sometimes I almost wonder if all of the financial system is a complete mess.
Mm,
Like, we know that it's not working. We're so vulnerable as individuals. We have no control no control over the value of money. We have no control over the interest rate. We have like it's putting everyone in such a vulnerable place. I mean, your paycheck, what you're getting today, may be the same amount of money that you get tomorrow, but it might just with inflation not be the same amount of things you can buy with it. And those are very serious topic. National debts is like taxes, how we ended up with so much taxes, and like our healthcare system. I mean, I can go on and on and on about all the things that I think are just really challenging. I don't have the answer to all of it, but I think those are really important things that we need to consider. I mean, what we're hearing a lot recently is like how overwhelmed the hospitals are. And, it's easy, we're talking about COVID, but really at the end of the day, if you have 123 people in a system that's, dealing with 90,000 people a day in hospital, like then 123 is not making the difference. That's not what's impacting it. What's impacting it is it's been overwhelmed for a long time. And so it's like the drop in in the glass that's making everything go over, but it's
Mhm.
not, it was already right at the edge, right?
Yeah.
So, um, and we're not really having those discussions for some reason, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, to your point just now, anyone who's had to go to emergency, anyone who's had to wait to get in to see a specialist, I was talking to a patient at the clinic the other day, 2.5 years to try and what? To try and see a specialist for an issue that is being experienced right now.
Yeah,
That's ridiculous. And then earlier you were talking about, how most of us go to walk-in clinics. Yeah, we don't have a doctor. Our daughter has a doctor who she's never seen because she's never needed to go, but she's got an official doctor, that we can put on forms and stuff like that.
yeah,
And if we were to, go back to Toronto, I mean, my aunt lives there and she's very well connected. And so my daughter will probably be able to get a doctor, but even there, it's getting harder and harder. But all of this to me, everything you're talking about, and these conversations, which maybe aren't being had, but or are being had, but not on a bigger scale, sort of thing. All of this to me still sort of sounds like it's all in this incredible stew of chaos and change and sort of crumbling of or the spilling over of
yeah,
to keep going with your metaphor of what's been there for long enough, that it has to change because it just doesn't work anymore. And if it took something like COVID, just one thing of many things that have happened over the last couple of years to, shake the vessel that, the liquid has been in, to see that, like the vessel needs to be changed, the liquid needs to go into something else, the liquids change viscosity, it's frozen over, it's felt like it's cloudy, whatever, right? It's
yes,
fluid.
yeah,
Um, Change is happening. And so what is our individual role, to how do we respond to the change?
yeah,
What do we choose to focus on? Our one thing that we can do really well, engage in, connect with, support, be a part of, what's mine to do? How is mine to show up?
yeah,
That's what I just sort of keep coming back to. The oxygen mask analogy or metaphor, if that's, what you want to use. But yeah, and even thinking of uh the little kids born into this time
yeah,
being, not, I mean, Glenn was talking about it yesterday, like not learning about empathy because, so many faces are shut off to them, are masked off to them.
yeah,
They're disconnected in that way because of masks and growing up thinking that this is normal. But how is that gonna impact this generation of children born, in places of the world where this is part of the collective reality? How's that going to interpersonal relationships and any kind of relationships going
huge impact.
forward?
Yeah, huge
So,
impact.
but we evolve because that is something that's gonna need to be addressed.
Hmm.
So I continue to choose to see the opportunity in this. And there are days, like I said before, where I feel triggered and I will rant and vent and whatever for a little bit. But overall, I choose to see the opportunity because I don't want to get caught up in the negative. And that's not me sticking my head in the sand or
No,
saying,
I know.
COVID isn't happening. People aren't getting sick. People aren't dying. It's just me choosing to look at it through a different lens and
Hmm.
saying, I'm choosing to focus on the fact that there's more going on than just this, that most people, it may be different now, but up until a certain point, most people had not had it. And out of those who had, most survived.
Yeah.
And that it's treatable, and there are other ways to navigate,
Mm.
and more conversation to be had than just signing up and going being herded along, which is also a judgment call, but being part of collective groupthink without really thinking and engaging in critical thinking skills about, hey, wait a minute, like, is this really a good idea? Is this for the best? I don't know. And even just thinking, just asking questions. So my focus is to remain positive and see where's the good in this. What can I do? And talk about prayer. I mean, that's my jam. That's my world. So every day, You
Yeah,
know, every morning there is meditation and prayer. Every night there is meditation and prayer. And throughout the day, the prayer requests come from my community here, from my community in Los Angeles, where people, you know, have requested prayer, and we stop, drop, and pray, because it's all energy. And it, you don't have to be in the same room with someone. They don't even need to know. It's just, you know, we move energy, shift consciousness in the moment with our intention. You know, that's
exactly.
it. And that makes a difference in the world, like you were saying earlier with the butterfly effect.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'll just stick one thing in at the end here. It was like you said, people saying to you in a panicky way, you know, is like the world ending? And I think the way to look at it is, yeah, it is, because the world is always ending and it's always beginning in every moment from where our conscious attention is, right? Like if it's a place of trust and knowing everything's going to be fine, then that's where, you know, that sets the tone. That's the frequency that you start aligning with, and then more and more people will do that. And when you're saying about your son challenging your kind of the way that your slash our generation has done things in terms of the grind and
Yeah.
the sort of getting through your day and getting through your life and your career only to get to, like, you know, maybe retire with some kind of perceived prize at the end of the experience. Like
Yeah.
that's a gift that he's questioning that at that age, to go like, yeah, that isn't for me, you know. So to be able to come back and say to our kids who are showing up and questioning like the way it has always been done, so to speak, like that's a great opportunity to say, yeah, I'm glad I'm here to show you the example of maybe like the contrast of what isn't going to work for you. So okay, step up. Like, what do you think is going to work for you? Like, what do you feel is passionate about? What do you feel interests you, and you can nourish yourself and start along a path, and maybe change a couple of times, because we all like change. Many of us, most of us, I think, change direction and careers a couple of times in our lifetimes. You know,
Yeah. No, absolutely.
so
I mean,
figure.
it's like I said, um, do I think that BC government will be my future, like part of my future? It's not looking like I even will have that choice, to be honest with you. Um, I have no regrets about any of it. If there's a decision that's made internally to um, fire people, because they haven't fired anybody yet, but it's a decision that they have to make. I can't, do I disagree with that decision? Of course, I do. I'm a big believer that, again, people have to do their own risk analysis. But um, I'm also mindful that, again, like this is a moment in history where I think things are shifting. And I hope there's enough people that are shifting those thoughts. And one of the things that I said in the rally where Lucia met me is that you know, I want people, we have these incredible critical thinkers that are kind of questioning things, and people are waking up at different stage in their lives and different moments. um, I'm not going to pretend that I had a full picture when all of this started, but at the end of the day, I think that we're in a place right now where um, more people are questioning their grind, as you call it, Glenn, and hopefully, and actually, it's not even hopefully, I actually really do believe that people are just going to start looking at how they're living their life, and really kind of wanting to connect a little bit more in a much, not just to the consciousness, but to their loved ones, to their neighbors, to their communities, and not in a way that's like support the whole concept of like socialism, but in a way that you can, really be human and have your own pack and your own village, and you can support the growth of the next generation in that way. And I think that we have this opportunity to all make a change like that and be engaged in that moment and that awakening. And some will be awake earlier than we were, and some will be awakened later on. And whatever that looks like, it might just be that some people don't ever wake up, and it will be the next generation that takes on um, this sort of like challenge. And but I'm very absolutely convinced that um, it will end up in a really good place. So um, is it? And I think it's just moving away from that fear and just being just mindful of the opportunity to just really fully engage in it versus like being completely panicked by it. And it's a very challenging place to move from. I'm very mindful of it, and people have waves. It's very much like grieving, where they're one day they're totally good, and it could just be like an hour or a minute they're really good, and the next minute they hear something that's really impactful. So the other thing is also be really aware of what kind of people you surround yourself with, and what kind of energy you surround yourself with, and what kind of information you surround yourself with. So just those are sort of my final thoughts.
Great.
Great
Well,
final thoughts.
we
Thank
we
you.
honor your wisdom and experience. We're really glad that you're able to um, share with us and send out that kind of positive blessing and reminder. But are we moving on last to the thing?
Yeah. So I think so, because it's been 2 hours or so, even with the blip in the middle and the hair at the beginning,
Yeah, I know.
which wasn't on camera. So yeah, so we're going to move into our next tiny segment, which is called the super rapid fire question round,
Oh,
which is
okay.
just a fun way for us to get to know you a little bit better. So
Okay.
Glenn is going to bombard you with questions for 1 minute, and you just answer them just
Yeah, first thing that
spontaneously,
comes to
no
mind. Okay.
critical thinking.
Oh God.
Just like, first
Okay.
thing that comes to mind,
Okay.
and then yeah, we'll laugh, and a good time will be had by all. So
Okay.
let me since I don't have a
And
timestamp
then
on my
and then
thing
at the
anymore,
end there will be
there will be all right, and at the end Glenn will tell you what you've won, and one is in air quotation marks, because really it's a prize, but it isn't, but it is, or is it? But anyway, okay, hold on. Let me get my clock, and we'll get
1 minute.
1 minute. 1 minute. Oops, stop, reset. Okay, honey bunch, are you ready?
yeah.
Ready, set, and go.
Okay, Corinne, do you sing in the car?
Yes.
How many tattoos do you have?
None.
Which do you prefer, books or movies?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'll go with movies.
Family night or date night?
A date night.
Funny friends or honest friends?
Oh, oh, that's a hard one. I'll go with funny.
Walking on the beach or in a forest?
Hmm. I'll go with forest.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Spring or autumn?
Autumn.
Asking for help or going it alone?
Asking for help.
Having a magic wand or a time machine?
Time machine.
Bicycles or cars?
Cars.
Forgetting or forgiving?
Forgiving.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
You know what? You answered every single question the way I would have answered it, except for the magic wand time machine. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You're the first one to say date night over family night. And there was another one that was really obvious. But anyway, yeah, that's, oh my God. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Glenn, why don't you tell Karine what she's won?
Oh God.
Okay. That courtesy of the Greater Victoria Public Library. Thank you. Um, from the book by Matt Kahn, The Universe always has a plan. The 10 Golden Rules of Letting Go. Okay, and this is one of the rules in order to be emotionally free, it's okay to dislike. And this is about 2 pages, but it's short. Okay, and it's dealing with that thing of turmoil within. Okay,
Yeah.
so once you are clear on what resonates, you become very decisive as a human being. Simply put, in order to receive your highest potential, you have to be discerning. Not everything will be a yes or meant to be chosen by you. How else can each yes becomes powerful and unwavering? If you're not able to stand in the truth of every no, question mark. I'm not saying to lead with dislike, but to accept when it comes up for you. In order to have a direct experience of this insight, try repeating these words out loud. I allow the one who is capable of dislike to be accepted and loved as never before. Contrary to my past, I do not require this one within me to always be on their best behavior, trying to earn my loving attention. When, as a child, that was the very game, I never seem to have won. And instead, what's occurring is that I am facing my own conditioned nature. It has the right to lash out based on the attention it never received. It has the right to use thoughts to dislike anything in existence. And my job is to meet that dislike and any form of discord as an opportunity to love and accept myself as never before. Simply because dislike is giving the part of me that felt suppressed and silenced by my past the right to speak anything it wants on the inside with no punishment coming its way, and only greater acceptance and love to be offered. What dislike suggests may not always be the clearest truth, but the opportunity is always clear and available to use any internal experience of dislike as an opportunity to love and accept the parts of myself shut down by the judgment of others.
Thank you.
There you go. Just a reminder for all of us.
Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. Okay, so Corinne, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, is there somewhere they could go? Do you have a website? Do you have some contact information?
Uh, yes. So I am going to give you. Do I just give? Do you want me to send you a link and
You
then?
can say it right now, and then in editing, I will put up a slide so there's a visual for those people who are also watching,
Okay.
and then we'll put it in the information on the write-ups for
Yeah.
the episode.
So Corinne Bordua at protonmail.com.
All right.
So yeah, and the plan moving forward in the not so far future is likely to start my own counseling business. And so, for better or for worse, I'm doing it right now for free for many, many people that need it.
Yeah.
But at some point, I will need to put some food on my table. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah. But
Fantastic.
thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
letting me have this chat. I think that was brilliant. And yeah, I'm definitely interested if in the meditation piece. So maybe you and I can connect independently from this call,
Yeah, for
this
sure. Yep.
podcast, and talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, this was lovely, and who knows what the future holds? But hopefully we can connect. In a more in-person way at some point, have those conversation again. And yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to participate.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad I ran up to you after you spoke that day. It was
Yeah.
just a total, whim, impulsive, spontaneous thing. And yeah, what an incredible conversation that just, except for the blip in the middle where my computer ran out of disk space and we had to switch over to the cloud,
Yeah, no worries.
it just flowed. And, you know, talking about engagement and connection and, you know, what's triggering us as individuals, as a collective, about, you know, finding the opportunity in what is going on in our lives, about choice and freedom, and even all the stuff that you were talking about at the beginning about new motherhood and the connection between, you know,
Yeah,
baby and mom. And just, oh my gosh, it was such a rich conversation. And I feel like almost we could like pick any of those topics and do a
yeah,
whole
and have a
podcast or
whole
that and
other.
do a series.
We
So
could.
so thank you so
Yeah,
much for giving us 2 hours of your Saturday morning.
yeah, no
And
worries. I'll send you the link so you can see what that original rally was, and
sure. And then
yeah,
I can also put that in the description so that people can check it out if they'd like to as well.
exactly.
All right.
So for anybody that may be interested, I've recently accepted the volunteer position of Vaccines Choice Canada Victoria chapter. So there's another rally that will occur on January 22nd, and we will be there with Children's Health Defence Canada chapter. And so if anybody have any questions, they want to reach out, they have some things they want to connect, I will be there. And hopefully we can gather enough people and, you know, just have, again, this engagement and this connection that people so richly need and want in these challenging times.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for all of that information and the ways that people can get in touch.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for this incredibly rich, engaging conversation, this opportunity to just connect, interconnect with each other and with that incredible energetic flow that is the very essence of each and every one of us, of everyone and everything. Thank you, Honey Bunch, for co-steering the ship once again. And thank you to each and every one of you for engaging with us, however you are, whether you're listening, whether you're watching, whatever way, wherever you are. Thank you so much for your time and presence. We are so incredibly grateful. Stay tuned because there will be another brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are coming up soon. That's it. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lasia Kahoot, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping make this podcast a reality. Today's special guest, Karine Borjua. Music, Vasco Lorenco copyright, 123rf.com. Background illustration, Sakma Sterke copyright, 123rf.com. For more information on this podcast and our Lasia Kahoot Soul Excavator, please visit www.lasiakahoot.com. If you like what you've heard, please like, subscribe, and or let us know by leaving a comment. Thanks for tuning into Who Do You Think You Are?